Listen to Abdel-Fattah al-Burhan Abdel-Rahman al-Burhan, President of the Transitional Sovereign Council of the Republic of Sudan.
Your Majesties, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Heads of Delegation, Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, may the peace and compassion of God be with you. At the outset, I am pleased to extend to you, Mr. Chaba Kourouzi, my warmest congratulations on your election to preside over the United Nations General Assembly at its 77th session. I wish you every success in your work. I would like to express my appreciation also to your predecessor, Mr. Abdullah Shahid, who was President of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. President, we welcome the theme of this United Nations General Assembly session, and we call for more cooperation, joint action, multilateralism, and also the implementation of cooperation mechanisms in order to find sustainable solutions to global challenges and in order to reduce the nefarious repercussions of people around the world, particularly on countries who've been affected by conflict and less developed countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to look over the most recent political developments in Sudan and to reiterate our commitment for peace and a peaceful transition, to establish a real democracy that includes fair, free and transparent elections at the end of the transition period, in order to establish a civilian regime which represents all Sudanese people, and also to promote national understanding and to allow civilians to enter into dialogue and work together. We decided in a communiqué from the armed forces from the 4th of July 2022 to withdraw the military institution from this dialogue and to allow revolutionary political forces to form a civilian government. This will be a government which will be independent and will implement the rest of remaining requests from the transition period. Here, I wish to reiterate our commitment to cooperate with UNITAMS in line with the United Nations Charter and its mandate set forth by Security Council resolution and in line with the list of requests presented by Sudan to the United Nations to promote the transition. Cooperation will continue with UNISFA. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome the different initiatives that foster national understanding in Sudan, particularly national initiatives which are subject to rigorous debate where all civilian forces participate in too, i.e. youth, leaders of community leaders, civil society organizations, and signatories to the Juba Peace Agreement. We hope that this process will succeed and will allow for a democratic transition to take place through the holding of free and transparent elections. President, in order to promote national understanding, we have provided all the necessary support to the tripartite mechanism led by UNITAMS, IGAD and the African Union. However, this mechanism has done a lot of work but has yet to conclude. And this made debates on national consensus more complicated. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to the efforts that we have been making following the glorious December Revolution, we signed the Juba Peace Agreement. This toned down the conflict in Darfur and provided stability and security to the region. From this high rostrum, we will call on our brothers Abdel-Aziz Al-Enoun and Abdel-Wahid Mohamed Noor to join the caravan of peace and to work together to build a future of Sudan. In Darfur, and following the establishment of peace and community reconciliation, the rate of voluntary return of displaced people has increased. In order to protect civilians from joint force groups were created, and therefore we call on the international community to provide us with assistance to strengthen these efforts and to build peace in line with the Juba Agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the challenges in Sudan that you are all aware of, my country is sparing no effort to address these challenges and continues to play a positive role for peace, stability, and development in our region. For example, I'm thinking of our leading role that we play to implement the revitalized peace agreement in South Sudan, a brotherly country. It also covers our cooperation with our brothers and sisters in the government of Somalia. In addition, Sudan was the coordinator alongside the African Union in efforts to reach a peace agreement in the Central African Republic. Moreover, Sudan participated actively in meetings to promote peace, security, and cooperation in the DRC. Moreover, Sudan has been focusing on cooperation between African countries, Horn of Africa countries, and East African countries when we presided over IGAD. Sudan is continuing its joint activities with brotherly country Chad for border control, and Sudan is also coordinating with other stakeholders to maintain security in Libya, a brotherly country. President, we are fighting against organized crime too. And in order to do so, we have been cooperating with different parties, stakeholders. We support all peoples to exercise their legitimate rights in line with national legislations. President, Sudan is sparing no effort to achieve the SDGs because we are convinced of the importance of the outcome document, and the transition government adopted a strategic document to reduce poverty from the period of 2021 to 2023. And in July last, Sudan presented its second voluntary national report. Of course, we do need assistance from our friends, from our brothers, from our development partners in order to work with Sudan. And we reiterate our full commitment to implement the 2030 agenda, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, too, in order to promote a more sustainable future. President, external debt is a real obstacle which is hindering social and economic development in Sudan. It is also hindering the implementation of the SDGs. I'm sure you know Sudan should be able to benefit from the highly indebted poor countries. This is a place I would like to call on the international community, brotherly countries and friends to honour the commitments they made during the Paris meeting in 2020 and the Berlin meeting in 2021. Even more so given the fact that Sudan has set up all the necessary legislation to pay off its debt. Ladies and gentlemen, the food and energy prices are skyrocketing. This crisis requires further international cooperation. in order to resolve it. Sudan should be able to guarantee its own food security on a regional and international level, but from this rostrum we call on the United Nations and specialized agencies, as well as regional organizations and brotherly countries, to support efforts of Sudan to meet this objective through transfer of agricultural technology, through capacity building, and through support for the creation of a Center for Agricultural Research. Ladies and gentlemen, we've hosted millions of refugees from across the continent, and for years now we have had our doors open to refugees, and we have shared our limited resources, and we provide them with protection. And this is despite economic constraints that we're all experiencing. The number of refugees is currently at 4 million people. But climate change is continuing. Droughts and floods are multiplying too, and humanitarian assistance is falling. This is why we would like to recall our collective duty. We must act together to provide assistance to refugees. Ladies and gentlemen, there is another priority that Sudan has in disarmament. It is the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Sudan, much like all developing countries, is suffering from this scourge. It is a scourge that has an economic and social dimension. This scourge has been made more complicated by competition for water, pasture resources, for mineral resources too. And this has caused these weapons to proliferate further. Therefore, we need to be able to control these weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, now, in terms of Security Council reform, we support the Common African Position. We participated in the informal intergovernmental negotiation process on Security Council reform. The Security Council must be reformed, and this must be far-reaching reform and should include reform of the working methods of the Security Council in order to address the negative effects of current practices. For example, we have seen that unilateral wording has been used and the hegemony of pen holders over some countries. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to thank all brotherly, friendly countries who have stood by our side at our darkest times. I would like to call on the international community, the UN, and our friends to show further solidarity with Sudan. Thank you very much. President, may peace be with you.
We were watching live statements of Abdel-Fattah al-Burhan Abdel-Rahman al-Burhan, President of the Transitional Sovereign Council of the Republic of Sudan. Al-Burhan